you have to go through training. You have to go once a year for
Yeah. You should.
certification.
You
It's not
should.
as simple as people think it is.
You know where it's simple to get a gun? In Florida.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Hello. Hello.
Good morning,
All right.
Rob. How are you?
Good morning.
Fantastic.
Okay.
All right.
So we're halfway through this year now. So let's
Don't catch
go.
me up.
Where are we?
All right. We are in the Simon Reish Pei. Hey. Which we began last week. We were up to Sif Katan Gimel in the Mishnah Brura. Just to remind you where we were, I'm going to reread the Mishnah, the Shulchan Aruch, just so we're all on the same page. So it's that's Sif Katan Gimel. So I'll go back one page. So the Sif Aleph for the Shulchan Aruch, right? The important mitzvah of Shnai Mikra Ve'echad Targum. So the Shulchan Aruch here says, just again, we're going to repeat Aleph, and then we'll jump right into where we were in the Mishnah Brura. Afal Pisha Adam Shomea Kol HaTorah Kula Kol Shabbat B'Tzibur Chayav Likros La'atzmo B'Chol Shavua Parashas Oso HaShavua Shnai Mikra Ve'echad Targum Afilu Ataros V'Divon. Okay, Sif Reish Pei Hey. Yeah. We're just rereading Aleph. So even though a person hears the entire parsha with the tzibur on Shabbos, right? You sit there for the Kriyas HaTorah. A person is obligated to read on his own, his or her own, all week. That week's parsha twice in the text, and once with the Targum, once with an explanation, not a direct translation, but an explanation. And here probably Targum is a reference to Targum Onkelos. And then we have this line of Afilu Ataros V'Divan, which is from the Gemara, even Ataros V'Divan, which are places that are listed in Book of Bamidbar, places that the Jewish people stopped on their journey. So we're up to Sif Katan Gimel, which talks about V'Divan. Why was Ataros V'Divan used as the examples? And by the way, you should know, even in my these extra comments over here, there are many Mefarshim who grapple with why were Ataros V'Divan used as a classic example of, like, you even have to read this part, which is just names of places. You have to read them more carefully. You have to read them, as the Mishnah Berurah I'll explain here. Gimel, so Sifkat on Gimel, V'Divan. Rotze Lomar, what he means to say here is Afal Pisha Ein Bo Targum. Even though there's no Targum, V'hu Adin Ruvain V'Shimon, the same halacha. So you have to read it, even though there is no Targum. You have to read it as if there was a Targum, which means you're reading it essentially a third time. Same thing happens when Ruvain and Shimon, the beginning of Sefer Bamidbar. There's Sefer Shmos. There is a listing of all the names of the children of Yaakov, as if we weren't paying attention all the Sefer Bereshit. But okay, it's there. And essentially the entire psukim, there's 4 psukim with, you think, 3 names of 3 names of each child, and there are 4 psukim. We know this. And by the way, that's a separate point. And then the point here is there's no Targum. Reuven is Reuven, Shimon is Shimon. There's nothing to grapple with. What does the text mean?
Because historically, at that point, they were in the desert, and there was no Targum that had been created yet.
Well, I'm saying, like, us, the readers here, thousands of years after these stories happened, there's no Targum for the names and places. Or you would think there wasn't, by the way, right? And most of the time, if you do read Targum Onkelos, most of the time you read over names in the story. The name is a name. Moshe is Moshe, Aaron is Aaron, Avram is Avram, Sarah is Sarah, right? So
also, Rob, they didn't have our Torah, because there are portions of our Torah that hadn't occurred to those Jews in the desert yet. For example,
true, but the Targum, comes later. The Targum is written in Aramaic, right? This is a later, I want to say translation. I'm going to use the word loosely. A later translation of the word of the text of the Torah text. Now, Simeon, maybe you're alluding to the fact that there is a Gemara that says that the Targum was given to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai. There is such a Gemara.
No, I'm not referring to that at all. The Hefech. look, part of the Torah talks about near the end the death of Moshe Rabbeinu.
Yeah.
So it hadn't occurred yet at 3/4 away through the Torah.
No, I don't disagree with you, but the Targum is a commentary. Onkelos was a person who lived in the time of the Mishnaic period. So he's not writing, as the Jews are traveling in the desert. He's looking at the Torah text thousands of years after it was written, and his job, if he saw it, was to explain it in Aramaic, which was the vernacular.
At
So
that time, yes, because the Jews were in Persia.
well, they live in Eretz Yisrael, but they spoke, but they were speaking Aramaic. That was the language that they were speaking at the time. Now, let's just finish this. He says here, Reuven and Shimon, so it's very important halacha. If a person is doing Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum, and you come across a psukim of names and whatever, you want to fulfill the mitzvah of Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum properly, you would just read it a third time. Because there's no Targum for Shimon, Reuven and Shimon, etc.
No, but there are reasons those people had those names, were given those names.
Oh, for sure. When there's explanations of that, for sure. And by the way, the Targum, I'm sure, gives you the Aramaic and the explanation of those things. But when there is just a list of names and places, and it's just that, oftentimes it's just, if you look in the Targum, it's just the same. It's a repetition. So if a person reads the Targum, you'll be okay. You'll get your third time through. This will become more important. What we just said about the 3 times becomes more important if you use Rashi as your Shnai Mikra V'Echad and your Targum. And I'll explain why when we get there. But he says here, V'yesh machmirin, there are those who are strict. V'ataros v'divon yesh bo Targum Yerushalmi, as I talked about last week. So Tzarech Likros Sham HaTargum. There are those who are machmir and say, no, Ataros v'divon were used particularly as examples because there is another Targum on them, the Targum Yerushalmi. There are many Targumim, okay? Many Targumim. The one that you find in your Chumash, and your standard Chumash is Targum Onkelos, but there are many others, and the Targum Yerushalmi does have something to say about Ataros v'divon that's not just the name translation. And so therefore you have to read, if there is another Targum which gives an explanation, as opposed to the Targum which may just offer up a straight listing of the name, you should find another Targum which gives you some Perish. Now, the Maritz Chayes and the Makor Chaim say that on this particular pasuk, and we opened this up last week, and to my great shock, I didn't remember this, but not that I didn't remember, that's not a shock, but what was surprised was that Taras V'Divan, if you look in the Onkelos, you do get a Perish on the it doesn't say Taras V'Divan, it gives an explanation that's probably we looked at last week. It's a description of the location of these places, not just their names. So they were probably their more recently used names, which Onkelos does do. Having studied Onkelos a little bit, I'm no expert. Sometimes he will use the names that were more current of certain places, which is a kind of commentary. Okay, so that's why he says over there that the Targum Onkelos on this pasuk was borrowed from the Targum Yerushalmi. Now, that's not what Onkelos wrote. That was what the Targum Yerushalmi wrote. Anyways, that's why on Ataras V'Divon there was already what to read about in our edition of Onkelos.
That's a question.
Yes.
We may have covered this last week. What's the source of Shnai Mikra?
It comes straight from the Gemara. It's a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. It's in Brachos. I think it's Daf Ches, if I'm not mistaken. And there are different reasons given. One of the reasons is given is that that way when we come to the Kriyas HaTorah on Shabbos, we're prepared. You can follow along. You really know it. It's a different experience when you are. That's one approach. The other, I think our Shulchan mentioned some of these other reasons because it says in Ava Rabbah, which is all about learning Torah. It says there that what do we do? Lishmoa lilmod. We listen. That's listening to the Kriyas HaTorah, but we also have to take an active role in it, in reading through it ourselves prior to Shabbat. Twice in the text, and the third time that way we understand. Why do we have the Pam Shlishi? He says, Kadesh Yavin Mashu Lo Made. It's great that you learn the Torah text, but you should understand what you're learning. So the Targum, or we'll see Rashi maybe counts the Targum, gives us more.
It doesn't explain every word though.
Well, so right, so as David just pointed out, the biggest difference in Rashi and the Targum doesn't leave one word every word. Sometimes they just say the same word and it's in Aramaic. He'll just write the same word, but every word is considered. Rashi will sort of tell you, okay, I'm talking about this part of the pasuk, this. So there are psukim where Rashi doesn't weigh in at all. So we'll talk about how you deal with that vis-a-vis this mitzvah. But also just be aware, the Aruch HaShulchan mentions this, and this will come up later, hopefully today, which is that there is the Gemara in Masechet Sota that Nidarim. The Targum is Karov Lashon HaKodesh V'nitan b'Sinai. The Gemara in Nidarim says that the Targum that we see in Onkelos was given at Har Sinai, and that must have been passed down through the generations, I guess.
The great synagogue in Alexandria, remember, and the Targum.
Correct. Yeah, sure. The idea of the idea of the psukim being translated or explained in the language in which people were speaking in general. Yes, that goes back to an old tradition.
Rav?
Yes. But what happened was Shechachum, the Aruch HaShulchan says that the Targum was forgotten, was given at Sinai, and then it was forgotten. And the Chazar, Onkelos, they used to, Kedamrin Reish Megillah, and then Onkelos brought it back. I can't just speak to the accuracy of such a... Yes, he became there's also, yes, for sure. And if you compare Onkelos to the other Targumim, Onkelos is the most simple take. There are a lot. Targum Yerushalmi often brings in, medrash, which is great, by the way. Nothing wrong with it. There's often medrash that's sort of stuck into the commentary. The Onkelos is the most straightforward in terms of sticking to the text. Doesn't mean he doesn't, by the way, give explanations sometimes that is, beyond just like what the words are, because that actually wouldn't fulfill the mitzvah of Targum, ironically. As we'll talk about. So if you just translate it into English, like a JPS Tanakh translation, where it's an attempt to be a very literal translation, that is not a fulfillment of Targum, because Targum has to give explanation. We're going to see that today. We're going to come to that right now with Rashi.
Rav?
Yeah, sorry, Timmy, go ahead.
Rav, I'm sorry. I'm having difficulty in understanding or fitting into what I know about the Jews being fluent in Aramaic when they were in the desert, which is the point that is made when he talks about Taros and Dibon.
Yeah, look,
it makes no sense to me. First of all, the Torah was given in Hebrew.
Yes. No question.
Second of all, we are taught that for three reasons, Klal Yisrael went through the miracle of being able to leave the slavery of Egypt.
Because they use such a language.
And Malbusham and Lishonam.
Right. So look, I would say the following.
They had to know Hebrew. What is Aramaic coming in the middle of this?
So that Gemara and Nidarim, I want to just remind you, it's sort of like a midrashic teaching. It's not a halachic teaching. There's something to be said when it's almost like the madrash that says that we all knew Torah in the womb of our mother, and then the malach went boop, and it was all gone. There's a beautiful lesson in that. So you can take away. It's the Chazal giving us something beautiful. Is it literal? I have no clue. I have no way to dispute this medrash because I don't remember it. That's the beauty of this medrash, that you can't dispute it because you can't remember it. You can't remember that moment in life. But I would say that the medrash that says that the Targum Onkelos was also given at Sinai. I don't know. By the way, even they acknowledge Shechachum v'Chazdar Unkelos, so he brought it back. What does it mean that there was a Targum when they were speaking Hebrew anyways? I don't know. I would say I would keep it in the category of a sort of a midrashic teaching, which maybe is not to be taken literally, and maybe it's supposed to be, homiletical in nature, that you should make find a beautiful lesson in it. Okay, take a look at the Sif Beis in the Shulchan Aruch. We continue on here. Im lamad ha parasha beferish Rashi chashuv kamo targum. If you read the parsha with Rashi's commentary, that is considered like as if you did the Targum. Rashi fits the bill of Targum. So you read the text twice, and not Targum Onkelos, you read Rashi, you're good to go. You fulfilled the mitzvah of Shnai Mikra of Echad Targum. Yes, 100%. That is absolute psak halacha. That is why I think Rashi was already popularized, as you see here. Rashi was, again, remember the Shulchan Aruch is writing this. Rashi was 300 years before him, and it was already, I think 300 years. That makes sense.
Rashi's 950 years. Yeah.
What was it? How much is it, Steve? Maybe 500, because he was more like 1500s, right? And he was 1040. Rashi was 1040. So maybe almost 500 years. Right. Right.
No,
So
of
about
the
500
common era.
years, that means that Rashi took hold. That he could say, yeah, you could learn Rashi too. Like the Rashbam didn't have a good commentary on the Torah. If you read the Rashbam, it's very in the Rashi. It's more pshat than Rashi's style, right? And his grandson, right? And there was Ban already by that point. But Rashi is a great scholarly book about this. I'm happy to point you in that direction if you want. Rashi became extremely popular after his life. Okay, during his lifetime, not so much. After people, in terms of like the widespread nature of his parish, but he becomes more popular posthumously in terms of his commentary.
He's the only one that has to basically get a description or translation of everything.
It's amazing.
Well, yes, correct. Though there were others. The Ramban wrote a parish on Gemara. There are many Mefechtos. I'm not holding if he had every one, but you can buy instead of the Ramban. You can find sometimes even on the page the Rashbam was on a certain Dapei Gemara. So Rashi's commentary was unique. Only perhaps it was partly because it was the first of its kind, but. We'll see here. We're going to see the Mishnah Berurah is going to tell you why Rashi was so important. Okay, so let's take a look here, and then we'll finish the second half in a moment of the Shulchan Aruch. But let's look at the Mishnah Berurah. Daled Farish Rashi. Shehu mefarish Mikra Kamosha mefarish Targum the Yoster man. He says he's like the Targum, but he's a little more. He's like a little more. He explains the text, but gives you more. Okay, Aval in Kra Bishar Laz. If you just read a translation into another language. Shehu mefarish rak es hamilos lechud, which just explains the words, directly translates the words. Lo yatzei dechovasa bimkom targum. You don't fulfill the mitzvah of targum, a direct translation or an attempted direct translation. I grant you, a translation is already a form of commentary, because to translate a word out of its original is to say this is how you should understand the word and not this way. And there are nuances in translating. That's just the nature of it. But if you have an attempted direct translation, that's why not to postle the JPS translation of the text, but that's an attempt, and I love that they do this, right? That's an attempt at a direct translation of the text. That is not going to fulfill the mitzvah of Targum.
But the English, by the way, is very hard to incorporate.
Yeah, for sure.
Their...
Yes, and by the way, the Art Scroll does it all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. I remember what I was yesterday reading, and I looked at the Art Scroll. I was like, that's not what that word means. But I get it, That is, yes. If you read such, I remember actually one of my rebbeim when they wrote Stein. Well, that was in his shir. Why do he said that is a valid fulfills targum in a valid way. Why doesn't that attempted direct translation work? because the Targum's job is to explain a number of things that are not understood simply from the text. Okay. Hey, chashuv kamo Targum. Why does Rashi count like Targum? Okay, that's why you can fulfill the mitzvah with reading the text twice and one time the commentary of Rashi. What do you do with the psukim that don't have Rashi? Rashi doesn't always have what to say on every single pasuk. So yikra osan shlosha pe'amim. So if there's a pasuk that doesn't have any Rashi on it, you should read the text 3 times. Now, I always want to know what's the answer. There's a great Rashi. Taught this to your daughter when she was in my class in 4th grade. There's a Rashi in Sefer Bereshis. I think it's the only in the pasuk where he writes, "Eini Yodea." I don't know what to.
No, there's plenty of places.
And but that was I think in that pasuk it's the only thing he says.
The aphod, he said.
Right, Eini Yodea. Does that count, or must I read 3 times? Because Rashi's not saying anything really. He's saying I'm not saying anything.
Oh, he just says Eini Yodea?
Yeah, Eini Yodea. So does that?
He says Eini Yodea, but then he says, but near.
No. In Bereshis, there's one time when he literally all he writes is I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know what to make of this.
That's pretty good.
And if that's the case, do you have to read? It's the halachic question. Do you have to read the pasuk a 3rd time, or does Rashi saying I don't know count? Teiku, I have no idea. You have to. Maybe don't take the chance. Read the pasuk the 3rd time. Okay, that's a cute little question.
But you don't
Okay.
accomplish anything if you didn't understand it, and you're looking to understand it, and you read it 3 times. You can read it 5 times. If you don't understand it, like this morning we were learning Haros for Dibun. I was unfamiliar with those words until you explained it. I could have read it 14 times. I wouldn't.
Yeah, so that's a problem that will happen. Let me actually mess that. Maybe my extra comments. Yes, that's why it's important that you should try to have a targum. If you don't, so the backup is that you read just the text again. Okay. Bar Shiyavin is Perish Rashi, but here's the problem. Until they came out with the art scroll, or not the art scroll, before that, there was an edition. I forget who was the printing press. It's an old one. What was it? Silverman with the Chumash on top and the Rashi on the bottom, and then there was the side by side Hebrew English. Until blue, that's right. Until then, many people didn't know how to read and understand Rashi, and now Art Scroll basically made a Steinbecker Targum instead. With Rashi, we're in a different space. But if people didn't understand Rashi, even though Rashi, of course, is in Hebrew, which may have been simpler than reading the Aramaic for people, so what do you do?
And a different
if you didn't understand Rashi, Roy Likros beferish HaTorah sheyesh bilshon Ashkenaz bizmanenu. He says you should read it in a commentary that was written in German, okay, Ashkenaz in our time. Who might he have been talking about? I don't know. I wonder if it's Shimshon Lafal Hirsch. I don't know. Who wrote in he wrote in German, okay. But if you find another commentator who writes in English, or you find a translation of Rashi into English, right? That worked, right? Kagon Sefer Tze'ena or Ena v'Chayot Sevo, like the Sefer Tze'ena or Ena.
That was very famous, by the way.
Which was very famous, correct, in its day.
One woman would read it for her. My grandmother was a sugar.
Yeah.
She read Tana Rena, and the other women would listen. It was in Yiddish.
It was in Yiddish, right?
Yeah, my grandmother read it too, all the time.
Okay, everyone's grandmother read it. Tana or Ena, it was in Yiddish. It would explain the
They would just listen.
And so there was a group that would listen to it. Yeah. That's beautiful. Wow. And your mother was the reader? No. You can say your grandmother was the reader. Beautiful. Wow, that's very special. So Tana or Ena was Yiddish. So okay, most days in the days of Chafetz Chaim, we're speaking Yiddish. So in that area, of course, in Poland and whatnot. So Hamivar Metzla Parsha al Perish Rashi, who explained the parsha according to Rashi, right? Ushar Chachamenu and other great sages, Zichron Livracha, Habenuyim al Yesod HaTalmud, which were built on the foundations of the Talmud. Tzena Rena, yeah. Oh, you look up on Wikipedia.
So
yeah.
It says it was written by Rabbi Yaakov ben Yitzchak Ashkenazi who lived between 1550 and 1625, written for women, and there's not fluent in Hebrew.
There you go. So it was
Language commentary.
correct. It's very smart, by the way. Very smart. Because people, you want people to feel connected to the Torah text. So you need to make it in the vernacular. As much as people will criticize all the right, as much as people criticize, and I understand, I do get the criticism of like, oh, everything is being translated now these days into English, and the people aren't going to learn how to learn, in the original, et cetera, and I hear it. And there's a trade-off in everything, but at the end of the day, you have so many more people who are connected and learning, as opposed to it's a little bit like that Gemara in Brachos about Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua. And Rabbi Gamliel didn't want you to come into the base medrash unless you were all that, right? And Rabbi Yoshua is like, no, the base medrash should be open. And at the end of the day, the base medrash was opened. And so there's a lot of positives come out of the fact that much has been translated. It's still important to learn it's an original. That's because the translation piece. Coming as lost, and it's of course you need to connect with the original text. And by the way, that's the beauty also of this mitzvah, which is Shnai Mikra v'Yachad Targum. You have to connect and engage with the original text. Okay, now let's keep reading the Shulchan Aruch. The next comment he's going to explain the difference between Targum and Rashi in the Mishnah Berurah. But first, let's go back up on top. The Shulchan Aruch finishes Beis by saying V'yirei Shamayim Yikra Targum V'gam Perish Rashi. People like this, by the way, I don't know how you have enough time in the week, but if you do, God bless. The Yirei Shamayim, those who fear heaven, read the Targum and also the commentary of Rashi. So that's Shnayim Mikra V'Shnayim Targum. Okay. That's really intense.
It says Rashi is a Targum, but then it says, by the way,
you should do both. Do both. Yes.
So I don't know how to read that.
No, the halacha. No. But this is clear. Yirei Shamayim is the extra level. That's like extra credit. The halacha is if you read Rashi, that's your Targum, and it works. That's not even a question. The Psak halacha is Rashi counts. This is like extra credit if you can do both. Why would you even think to do extra credit though? Sometimes there's not worth it. Why would I do extra credit? So look what he says here in the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Vav says the following: He hatargum yesh lo mala. The Targum has a mila. It's got something that Rashi doesn't have. Something good that it doesn't have. Why? Shenitan b'Sinai. It was given at Sinai.
Oh, come on.
V'gam hu mefarish kol mila umila. The part that here I would focus on, not that much that it was given at Sinai. Not that that's not important, by the way. I'm not trying to poo-poo Gemara. There's something beautiful about that too. But the most important part is no word is skipped in Onkelos. No word is skipped. Rashi might focus on one phrase in a pasuk that's 15 words long and beautiful, but you don't get the little parish. You don't get the parish on the other part of the pasuk. So Onkelos doesn't skip anything. Now, by the way, Onkelos just might sometimes translate it into Aramaic, as he often does, but at least you're engaging with every part of the text. That's what's the mila of Targum Onkelos. And by the way, honestly, Targum in general, Targum never skips. You could Targum Yerushalmi, Targum Yonasan ben Uziel. There's no Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, technically on Torah. That's not really him, but there's no Targum that doesn't engage with basically every word. And some of the other Targum, not the Onkelos, some of the other ones they're long because they really start to get into a lot of things in the pasuk, not just one inyan. Now, what about Rashi though? Uferish Rashi yesh lo mila. Rashi also has a mala. What's his thing that he has that the Targum doesn't? Shu befarish is inyan al pi midrash Chazal Yosef me'ha Targum. If you read Targum Onkelos, you don't get very much medrash at all. Rashi gives you Chazal. He gives you Pshat, and he gives you Chazal's take on it, right? And Rashi, in many ways, popularized, to his credit, a tremendous amount of midrashim. Without his putting it into the commentary, some of us wouldn't know certain midrashim. That's just the reality. Because he said he would give you, he wouldn't give you the whole medrash, but then you knew there was the medrash about this. Okay, So that was what Rashi has that the Targum doesn't. Uve'emes kein roi linhok l'chol adam. Mishnah Berurah here says, in truth, a person, it is fitting to for a person to sheyilmo b'chol shavua hasidra, to learn the whole parsha of the week. In Perish Rashi levad hatargum, with Rashi aside from the Targum. You want to do the Targum, do the Targum. You should learn the Rashi. Ki yesh kama parashiyot b'Torah ubefrat b'chelek vayikra. Particularly says in the Sefer of Vayikra, there are a number of parashiyos. She'i efshar lahavinam klal al yedei Targum l'chod. If you just read the Targum, you have no clue what you're talking about. If you want to try to, by the way, you want to read some of the descriptions in the Sefer Vayikra of the Karbanos and this and that and the Tazria Mitzorah, and you think you're going to know what you're talking about? By the way, and I'm speaking as a complete amateur in this, the first year that I ever tried to do Targum, Shnai Mikra, the Echad Targum, and that year learned Targum, I had to keep next to me a Jastro. You're like, and I'd be like, I remember actually, there was descriptions of, on the Urim V'Tumim of the stones. This is in Shmos. And I had to, like, every word in the Targum, I had to be like, what is he talking about? Oh, yeah. A precious gemstone. Oh, thank you. I had to look up something, and this kind of gemstone and that kind of I didn't know what they were even in English when they were translated in Jasper into English. So if you just are taking, and that's just an example, I don't even know if Rashi has what to say on that, but you don't, as Rabbi Weeder used to tell us as students, I'm sure he tells his current students this, which is, if you really want to brush up on your Aramaic, learn Targum. That's a great way to improve your Aramaic. Really a great way to improve your Aramaic. Because you learn a tremendous amount of vocabulary, and actually there's a lot of repetitive vocabulary, that appears in Unclus. So the point is Rashi, it gives you really in Vayikra, it gives you explanations that you won't get in the Targum when you're translating, almost literally, but not exactly literally. Sorry, I read that. Targum chumash levad yeshlo. So what do I do if I before there was Safaria, before there was print, books that farm stores that were you had a chumash like the Hertz chumash. Hertz doesn't have a Rashi. There's some commentary at the bottom, but there's just a chumash. Hey, is there Unclus there? I can't remember. Is there Unclus in the Hertz? No, it's just the text. So what happens? What do I do? So Yikra Shnei Pamim Yikra, v'achar kach yishizdam lo Targum Yoma. Read it twice, and then when you get your hands on something on a Targum, you'll say that. Lo Yikra Pasuk HaMe'uchar Kodam HaMukdam, Ela Yikra Kaseder. Another important halacha. There is order when it comes to Shnei Mikra Targum. You can't go out of order. I'm going to learn this part of the parsha first, and then I'll go back to the beginning. No, it has to be done in order. So Lo Yikra HaTargum. By the way, to the point, in my extra commentary, you can see this if you want, Jeffrey, because you have the same edition. He talks about if you skip a pasuk, person skipped a pasuk in Targum as they're learning, and they realize, I skipped a pasuk a parak ago. You have to go back and reread the whole thing from that point on, because it has to be read. It has to be read kaseder. Some make that point. Some are makil by innovation, or some are makil not to make such a thing. But there are those who say that you would have to go back and read the whole thing from where you skipped the pasuk. Okay. And then he said he finishes here back in the Mishnah Berurah. Lo yikra targum tchila v'achar kach mikra. Don't read the targum first and then go to the text. Rather, ela yikra lechatchila. Ideally, you should be shnayim mikra mikodem v'achar kach targum. Read it twice, then get to the targum. Im efshar lo shelo yafsik bishnayim mikra ve'echad targum al shum davar hu tov v'yafeh meod. If you can sit down and do this whole thing at one fell swoop, that's the best. Okay, tov v'yafeh meod. It's very good. V'chein ra'isi mehamedaktikim osimkem. Those who are really medaktik, they do this. They sit down, they block everything out in their life. By the way, you have to put out at least a few hours of time in order to do this. You block everything out of your life. Shnayim mikra ve'echad targum. Read it twice, and then the second, then the third. There's a third time with the targum, and you do that. That must take multiple hours. By the way, somebody who is attempted to do Shnei Mikra Ve'echad Targum and once, was even very successful, got everything done that whole year. That's a lot of time. A lot of time. And the Baal Nefesh, really a very pious person, should do it as such in one fell swoop. Now that is really, very tough to do. However you feel that you are able to do it, many of the commentators point out, some of these extra commentators, if you want to break it up day by day, you want to break it up by Aliyah, by this, by that, everybody, the door is open. If you read through some of these extra commentaries that Jeffrey has on his side of his, however you see fit. If you want to break it up throughout the week, you want to do it in one fell swoop. That's most important. Get it done however it fits in your schedule of life. Okay.
Rabbi?
Yes, sorry, go ahead. Yes.
According to what we've just learned, reading it in English is no good. It doesn't count. But
if the English is literal, if the English is not a literal translation, it's an explanation of the text with a deeper fashion that's uses Medrash Chazal, gets beyond just the translation of the word, then you're okay.
Okay, because I don't know if you're familiar with Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan's translation, because what he does is he translates, but there are a lot of footnotes in which he cites in English what Rashi says, what Malbim, or a lot of other things. So
then that should work.
Count.
That should work. If you read the footnotes, that sounds I'm not familiar with. I'm familiar with Aryeh Kaplan.
Oh, it's a great.
But if that's what it is, then for sure count, because it's using commentary to explain the text.
Everybody should get this. It's the best.
I've seen that edition. Oh, I didn't know that was that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay. Let me just see if there's anything in the Aruch HaShulchan that was worthy of note here in Sifkat and Beis before we move along. He just talks about the Aruch HaShulchan says, what if you don't have anything except for a Hertz Chumash, right? You only have the text. You'll never get your hands on the Rashi or. So right, so then you use every pasuk 3 times. For the reasons that are that we explained. That was when Rashi doesn't weigh in. This is if Rashi can't weigh in because you don't have Rashi, then read it 3 times. Okay. Otherwise, he doesn't give us, I think, anything that was. I guess he just adds one thing here, that he says that the Gedolim in his day, where he skimu de dafka Targum Onkelos, the only Targum Onkelos is sort of worth. I'd say worth not the other Targum are not worth its while, but ve'ein yotzim b'davar acher she'Targum kadosh v'nita Sinai. Why? Because he said that many people, don't understand Targum. They don't understand Aramaic. So what are they reading? It's a bunch of gibberish to them. Yeah. So he says, all right, if you're going to read Targum, then only the Targum Onkelos, because at least that was given at Sinai, according to the Gemara. Deeper, connections there. And Chalila, we shouldn't read Targum Onkelos. There's a tremendous history to Targum Onkelos. Anyways, so that's why he says that Targum still has a place amongst our, our study, because of its very, ancient history, and that there's deeper things there. So that's why, look, if you want to read it. But the reality is, if you really want to understand Onkelos, you need a Jastro. I'm just saying,
What's the line dividing place of the Targum TV?
Which is right in Greek. When was it written approximately? Do you know?
Yeah, a couple hundred years earlier.
Before even Onkelos.
Yeah.
It was written
Right. The Gemara makes a reference to the translation that the Torah is being translated into Greek. Yeah. What's its place in terms of the fulfillment of Shnei Mikra Ve'echad Targum? Yeah, look, the rabbis were the ones who did it, but they did it under duress. So the question is, did they change things? I mean, the Gemara seems to say that they changed things in order so that, and the miracles that it was all, the Gemara records that it was all the same, but it probably wouldn't be because it's not, because it was an attempt to actually diverge from the text a little bit. In terms of how it should be understood. So I would imagine that this is you're referring to the Septuagint, right? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. The Septuagint, I would assume that that's not a fulfillment of Shnai Mikra Echat only because it's not, the Gemara itself sort of refers to this as being not 100% accurate in terms of sort of the classic understanding of the text, the Chazal understanding of the text. That would be my guess. Of course, it's always interesting to see what it says. But not sure that would be a way to fulfill this particular mitzvah. I would doubt that Chazal, who instituted this mitzvah, would say that that's okay. That's my guess. I'm just making a guess. By the way, it's important to know.
The Greek language, as a vernacular, became very predominant in Eretz Yisrael immediately in the period preceding the story of Hanukkah. The Greek culture was manifest at that time.
Yeah.
So, and when Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi wrote his Mishnayos in Maseches Megillah, he talks about if somebody reads the Megillah in Greek, is he Yotze? And his answer is only if he has the fluency in Greek to understand what he's reading.
Right. That makes sense. In any language, if it's translated, you have to understand, right? Correct. As opposed to if you read it in Hebrew in its original, you don't have to actually fully understand. Better if you understand.
That's correct. The Hebrew has an efficacy all its own.
That's correct.
Which is why I never understood why suddenly in the middle of davening we have to say Brich Shmei or even Kaddish and abandon Hebrew in favor of Aramaic.
I hear. Those are different topics. Rishmei is very different, actually, also than Kaddish. But we'll have to when we come to Kaddish in our learning, which will take us another whole cycle till we get around back to Chelik Aleph. But we'll get there, and then we'll have a more robust discussion about that. All right,
Rob, I hope so.
That's right. Sif Gimel. Miyom, back in the Shulchan Aruch on top. Miyom Rishon ve'elach chashuv im hatzibur. Remember, we said you're supposed to complete the reading with the tzibur. When is with the tzibur? Well, how do we define with the tzibur? From Yom Rishon and onwards. So, from Motzei Shabbos and onwards, that is considered with the tzibur. Now, here we have a bit of because remember, you're supposed to complete, if you go back to even Sif Aleph, it says, Chayav likros la'asa b'chol shavua. Oops, it doesn't have it here. In the original, in the Gemara, sorry, then I should read it in the original Gemara. The Gemara says, Tzarech lahashlim parshi yosav im hatzibur. It's funny that the Shulchan Aruch was not the one who used that language, even though he goes right to it in Sif Gimel. But okay. That the Gemara says you're supposed to complete a person is supposed to complete his or her parshios with the tzibur. What does with the tzibur mean? We should all be sitting in the same room. We should be. So he's explaining what does with the tzibur mean from Yom Rishon ve'elach, Sunday and on. When is with the tzibur? It means during the week of the coming week's parsha after the previous week's parsha ends. That's considered im hatzibur.
Does the Shabbos reading succeed or precede that notion? The week before Shabbos reading takes place, you have to complete the Targum, or the week after?
Let's read here. Let's see. He's about to give us some color here. Sifkat on Zion. Kevin shemaschilin ben minchasa de shabsa likros parashas shavua haba. So he says, since you begin reading at Shabbos Mincha, the Parsha of the following week, That is considered reading with a tzibur. Okay, so if you want to start already after Shabbos Mincha, you want to sit down at Shalosh Shudas and already start to go through the Parsha over the coming week, that's already Im HaTzibur. Because the tzibur read it. Right? And that's why it's even important to note, as Rav Chaim Kanievsky points out, that if you haven't davened mincha yet with the tzibur, let's say there were 2 minyanim, right? Not this, in our shul we have 1 mincha on Shabbos afternoon. You go to some other shuls, I know in Woodmere, my in-laws, there are 3 minyanim on the Shabbos afternoon, the young Israel of Woodmere. One's like the early one, one's in the middle of the afternoon, one is right before, the Zman, the Shkia. If you daven in the early one, great, you have all Shabbos afternoon, you can already start, you can get ahead. Next week's Parsha, you can already jump ahead. But if you didn't daven mincha, you never heard Kriyas HaTorah with the tzibur. So who are you to start the next Parsha? Because the tzibur didn't start the Parsha yet. So if you, he even goes as far as saying, if you didn't daven mincha yet, if you went to the late minyan, you can't start learning the coming week's Parsha because you didn't start with the tzibur yet. Okay, I could see that. I'm sure there are others on the other side of that argument too. But anywho, what do you do about Parshas Bereshis? That's a big problem because usually that's so this past year it fell out on a Wednesday, so you have to mush Parshas Bereshis into 2 days. So you have to wait until, according to the distant Karlitz, you can only start on Simchas Torah afternoon after they've read Bereshis in the morning, Chasam Bereshis. Okay, this year you have more time because it'll be on a Sunday, so don't worry. You'll have like a whole week to get Bereshis done because it's on the weekend. And if you live in Eretz Yisrael, you have even more time because it's on Shabbos. So you have a whole week till the next Shabbos to read Bereshis. Okay. V'im Kain, finishing up that Mishnah Berurah. Masha Kostav HaMechaber Miyom Rishon V'Elech Lav Dafka. It's not Dafkas. Motzei Shabbos I could start to read. It's already Erev Yom Rishon Shabbos Mincha time. Okay, so now we just gained everybody here a couple extra hours of Shnai Mikra Recha Targum. Sivkot Ches Chashuvim Atzibur Kama Acharonim Kosvu. There are a number of Acharonim, later commentators, who write Demin Hamuvchar Hu Likros of Erev Shabbos, that it is the choicest of all if you were to read and to do this on Friday. I don't even know if it's the Erev Shabbos, meaning Friday night. That's what it means. I'm just looking at the Shari Tshuva for a second, which is on this page. V'ikar hamitzvah likros achar chatzos v'achar shekara yelech lebeis hamerchas v'yitbol. No. The Shari Tshuva here, which is being referenced, says he's talking about Friday. No, not Friday night. Friday during the day, after
noon,
after midday. You should take a few hours and do that, and then afterwards, then you go to the bathhouse and take a shower, and then afterwards, I don't know, where's the help for the in the house? This guy is he's learning Torah for 3 hours. He's taking a shower, and then he comes home and Baruch Hashem, I guess his wife slaved away and paid the entirety of Shabbos. By the way, I just also want to point out here, there is no differentiation here between men and women. This is not, I guess you could say it's a positive mitzvah and it is bound by time because it has to be done during the week, but I'm not so sure that this is, where is the guy? He's anyways, that's what he's referring to here.
Yeah.
Min HaMuvchar. I've never been zocha to be Min HaMuvchar, but okay. Uvesefer Mate Yehuda, in the Sefer Mate Yehuda, Kostav De'im Hu Kore Mitchilas Hashavua V'Hala. If you start from the beginning of the week, so you start Shabbos Mincha the prior week, or you start on Sunday and onwards, Hu Gam Kein Bichla Mitzvah Min HaMuvchar. It's also good too. It's also very good. Okay. Ukamoshe Kostav Beis Yosef, as it's written in the Beis Yosef, the Muchach came in Divrei HaRambam. Sounds like that's how the Rambam says. You should read it all week long. You spread it over the course of the week. Oh, what did the Vilna Gaon do? His student who wrote down all the Vilna Gaon's minhagim. What did it say? What did he write? A beautiful minhag. And you see some people do this, by the way. It's a very special minhag. Sometimes I'm in school when I daven. I don't have this luxury, but if you could do this, I wish I could also do it sometimes in the summer months. But then I have to take this kid to this camp and whatever. But if you really, by the way, I'm not going to point out his name because I'm on a recording right now, and they do something. They do a different kind of limud. There's someone here every day, or a few people actually every day, who after davening is over, they sit and they learn for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and it's incredible. I'm going to do Mishnah. They do Mishnah Yomis, but I've seen some people who do Shai Mikra, and they sit after davening is over. It's a great time. You're already sort of focused in, and they take a few minutes. And after davening is over, and this is what the Vilna Gaon used to do. He would finish davening, and then he would read a part of the parsha every day. Miktas Sidra, Shtay Mikra ve'Echatargum, and Messiah be'erev Shabbos. And by Kem to erev Shabbos, he would finish at the time that was the best time to finish. That was what the Vilna Gaon did. So let's put it out there. The Vilna Gaon didn't do the whole thing on Shabbos afternoon. On Friday afternoon. He finished on Friday. But that's very short. If you finished, if you had already done, 6/7 of the Sedra. Okay, so that's something to note. By the way, the Chazon Ish, he would be nohek to learn also a little bit of the parsha each day, and then he would finish, and he would leave a little to finish on Shabbos morning. They wanted to go into Kriyas HaTorah, finishing Im HaTzibor. Because the tzibur is reading it that in the morning, so he'd be knowing right after Torah, he would make a little siyum on his own to just finish the last. It sounds like let's finish the very end, with the tzibur on Shabbos morning. All right, and then there's another sefer here. I'm not familiar with it. Sefer. It's Rav Kanievsky's sefer that people who read per aliyah per day, right? Even though that's not a psucha or stuma when you get an aliyah break, he says that's fine, and actually maybe it's good because that way people don't get confused. Where was I yesterday? I don't remember. So that's also open. Really, the point here is however you see fit to get this done. That's and it works. Go with your method. That is really the best way to do it. Okay, what time do I got here? All right, so maybe we'll pause here. We're up finished Gimel. Next week we'll see Daled, which is actually talks again about timing and what happens if life gets in the way and you can't finish that week. And what happens? Do you just give up altogether? Because speaking from experience, when you fall behind, it's hard to catch up. It is. It's just hard to catch up. That's right. So you have there might be a lot of time to make it up, and the key to Shtay Mikra ve'Echatargum is never giving up hope. That is really the thing. If you give up hope, you're a goner. It's because then by the time you can catch up until Shmini Atzeres, but if you have suddenly a whole sefer to finish in a day, it ain't happening. So key is not to lose hope. So hope everyone has a happy learning this week, and we'll see you. We'll be back on this same channel next